Hello again. Welcome back to week 3 of the Red Letter Challenge. Now, hopefully, after the first couple of weeks, you're starting to get a sense and feel of the power and the magnitude of the words of Jesus Christ and really what this Red Letter Challenge is all about. This is not just about, again, checking off boxes every week so that we can put aside our religious obligations. This is really about engaging in the words of Jesus Christ, letting them challenge us, letting them shape us, but more importantly, letting the words of Jesus transform us. I've said this now several times and I'll say it again. I believe that if you really engage and you let the words of Jesus speak to you, you will not be the same person at the end of these 12 weeks as you were at the beginning of this challenge. Not because of anything that I can do, but I truly believe that the words of Jesus that were recorded 2,000 years ago that you and I are now reading on a daily basis still have the same transforming power today as they did back then. But before we get into a little bit of week 3 and what's to come, I want to just take a moment and challenge you with a little story from history. There's a man by the name of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Maybe you've heard of him, maybe you haven't. He became known because in 1939, he was actually living here in the United States. Now, if you know a little bit about history, you understand that in 1939, our world was teetering on the brink of a major conflict. At the time, there was a leader in Nazi Germany by the name of Adolf Hitler. I don't want to go too deep into the historical parts. You more than likely have heard his name. You're more than likely willing to go and read, able to go read tons of literature on who Adolf Hitler is. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer was actually a German pastor and theologian. He was actually in America. He had fled Germany because he was being targeted and oppressed by Hitler and the Nazi regime, because he had begun to speak out against some of their ideologies, especially pertaining to their viewpoint on Christianity and God, because Hitler was trying to eradicate that and really set himself up not only as the leader of Germany, but sort of as the deity of Germany as well. And so Bonhoeffer really began to speak out against that, and he proclaimed the message of Jesus Christ. And so he fled to America. And in 1939, he is teaching at a seminary, and he feels compelled by God to go back to Germany, to be in Germany, helping those who were in a lot of ways victims of the Nazi regime and the Hitler's ideology. And a lot of his friends and people that were in his circle advised him not to do this, telling him that this was a bad idea, telling him that more than likely that would lead him to death. And so he returned back to Germany and spent the next few years speaking out against Hitler and not the Nazis, and took really a very dangerous and put his life on the line every day until finally in 1943, I believe it was, he was finally arrested, put in prison, and eventually executed. Now, Dietrich Bonhoeffer is one of many people that were martyrs for the cause of Jesus Christ. History is literally covered with the blood of martyrs, from those who stood up to oppression, stood up against those who were out to eradicate Christianity, all the way back into the very beginning of the church in the Roman times, when Christians were targeted and eventually put on display in colosseums and fed to the lions. And Hitler at one time, Nero, who was a Roman emperor at the time, around 60 AD, he actually would capture Christians and set them on fire in his gardens to illuminate his gardens at night. I mean, just Christians have always died for the cause of Christ. And Bonhoeffer was no different, but what makes Bonhoeffer such a powerful person in history is while he was in captivity, he wrote a book called The Cost of Discipleship. And in this book, he really challenges believers, not only in his time, but I really think it's believers throughout history, including you and I today, about what it truly means to follow Jesus Christ. And he makes a statement in that, and I don't know if I get it quite perfectly, but he makes the statement in that book that when Christ calls someone, he bids them to come and die. Now, I know that's kind of strong language, especially in the world we live in today, that our ears have become more sensitive to sort of that kind of harsh language. And while in some ways it's kind of a repelling statement, there's truth to this. Now, before you go too deep into this, I'm not suggesting or saying that God is asking you to come and to physically die. Do I believe that someone watching this may eventually one day give up their life, literally, for the cause of Jesus Christ? It's a high likelihood, especially in the world we live in, and the real fact that across the world today, people are still giving up their lives on a daily basis in many countries because they're followers of Jesus Christ. But this is really not about, are you willing to die? It really comes down to something that is deeper than that Bonhoeffer was really trying to get at, and that is to follow Jesus Christ is going to cost you something. Now, maybe you've heard the statement that the gift of God is free, salvation is free, and while this is a true statement, God gives us forgiveness for free. He offers us salvation for free because he paid the price. But you've already noticed this time that through now week 2 that Christ is calling you and I into a greater relationship than just simply saving us. He wants us to follow him. But we'll begin to find out in week 3 that when he asks us to follow him, there's a price to be paid. Because following Jesus is going to cost you and I something. But it's a greater thing than that, because if I just simply look at that, it maybe repels me. I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up. What am I getting in return? Well, let me ask you this. What if Jesus Christ didn't come to just improve your life, but he came to radically change your life? You see, if Jesus Christ is just an accessory and he comes along and he's going to improve your life, he's going to make it a little better here, he's going to give you a little more, things over here and kind of help you navigate that, then to give up something seems like too much for such a small improvement. But if I was to tell you that your life could be completely changed, that life as you know it could be radically changed, that you as a person could be transformed to where your own family did not recognize you, then ultimately there is no price too great. There is no cost too high for that kind of radical transformation. And what we saw already in week 2 with the woman at the well and the encounter that Jesus has with the man named Nicodemus is that when you come in contact with Jesus Christ and he invites you into this fellowship with him and this relationship with him, you are going to be forever changed. And so we're going to continue to lean into that in week 3. We're going to begin to see that Jesus' words begin to get a little more straightforward. He begins to speak with a little more clarity. And one thing we're going to find in week 3 is he's going to begin to declare that his kingdom has come. Not will come, not eventually come, but he wants his kingdom to come now. And so if his kingdom is coming now, he needs and desires for those who follow him to be a part of that kingdom. Now here's the problem with that. In order to have a kingdom, you must have a king. No kingdom is truly a kingdom without a king. Now you and I are not called to be the king. Jesus Christ is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. We're going to begin to see this week Jesus declaring the kingdom. Now, over the next couple of weeks, you're going to begin to read about what he meant by that statement. What is the kingdom? How does the kingdom operate? But we're going to begin to declare, number 1, we see that the kingdom is now. That Jesus Christ wants to manifest his kingdom in our lives starting today. Now, that takes something from you and I, and we find this invitation even in the readings for this week. In order for us to be a part of the kingdom, we've got to be willing to surrender our life to adopt the principles of God's kingdom. This is where that statement I made earlier comes down to, and that is, if you're really going to follow Jesus Christ, it's going to cost you something. And so we begin to see that here, and that pivots to the other part we see this week, and that is real discipleship is going to cost you something. Now, before we go too deep, let's just quickly define, what does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? Well, disciple is someone who is desiring to follow Jesus Christ. But let's break it down to a little more of a simplistic definition for you. A disciple is someone who is willing to let Jesus change them. Change what? Change anything and everything. A disciple is someone who is willing to let Jesus change them. Whatever he wants, however he chooses to do it. Now, if you make that statement, you understand that by making that statement, if you're allowing Jesus to change everything, that's going to cost you some things. It's going to cost you some things that you're going to have to give up, because his way is better than your way. But Jesus never asks us to give up something that he does not give us something greater in return. And so we're going to begin to see that this week when Jesus begins to call a fisherman, a leper, begins to call people that are on the outskirts, the broken, not the who's who of the world of that time. Jesus is looking for those who are willing to give up their life so that he can live in them and through them. And we begin to see that this week. So we see the kingdom manifested, and we begin to see that discipleship begins with you and I willing to surrender to Jesus Christ in our life, allowing Jesus Christ to change us. What part of us? All parts of us. And the other part we're going to see is rejection doesn't mean failure. We're going to begin to see this week that Jesus was rejected by some of those that were the closest to him, some of those who knew him the best. But Jesus did not take rejection as failure. Jesus understood his value and who he was. It was not defined by what others say. And you're going to begin to see. So if you're someone who struggles with how you see yourself, if you're someone who allows society and people around you to dictate who you are, and so you have felt like you were a failure because you don't match up to those around you, there's hope for you this week in the words of Jesus Christ. So strap in, buckle up. It's going to be another great week, but it's going to be another week that challenges you. I think I've said this before on the Red Letter Challenge, but it's worth repeating again. It's not a statement that's that is mine, but I've read it, and you've probably read it too. I saw a shirt the other day with it, and I wanted to buy that shirt and wear it on one of the Red Letter Challenge videos, and that is this statement: if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And hopefully what you've seen so far through the first 3 weeks is, man, this is challenging. But it's challenging not so that you can feel like a failure and overwhelmed. It's challenging you because it wants to change you. And that's what this is all about. That's what's driving this entire challenge is, I don't want to be the same. I want Jesus Christ to change me. And that's what the words of Jesus Christ can do. That's what the words of Jesus Christ can lead us to do. And we're going to begin to see that again this week. So maybe so far there have been areas where you've resisted. You've heard the words of Jesus, but they've cut deep, right? Because sometimes, man, the words of Jesus, they just cut right to the heart of the matter. And if you're not careful, they're hard to hear a little bit, because they cut past all the excuses and go right into our heart. But if you would let those words sink in, because those words were always wrapped in love, because Jesus came with grace and truth. And so we're going to begin to see this further play out by Jesus preaching the kingdom, healing a leper. He's calling disciples. He's rejected at home. We see all these things begin to take place here in week 3 readings. But for you and I, it's another opportunity to go down another layer. Another layer. I got into watching, there is shows on, I think Discovery Channel, where they dig for gold. And for some reason, I got fascinated by that and was watching some of the shows where they were digging for gold. And what I discovered is, and not that I'm a gold mining expert or that I have ever been on a gold mining expedition, but what I found is that years ago when the gold rushes happened in California and places like that, When they would go and they would pan gold at rivers, sometimes they would just find nuggets on the ground because a lot of the gold was on the surface. But nowadays, most of the gold that's left on the earth is buried deep in the ground. It has been there since the ice ages and all the other eras of Earth's geological history. And what I've discovered is that when they go to an area, let's say in the Yukon or in Alaska, and they begin to dig for gold, they have to do what's called stripping. What they mean by that is they have to dig down 5, 10, 15, 20, sometimes 25 feet, taking immense amount of dirt off the top to get down to where the gold-rich bedrock is. And so there are times they spend literally weeks just digging and dumping useless dirt because the real value is way down deep. And I will tell you, sometimes the words of Jesus do that in our life. Maybe so far in the last couple weeks, you're going, I don't really see the value. I don't really know what this is all about. I've done this challenge, but I don't see anything yet. Well, God's just been removing all the layers of things in your life. He's taken all the stuff that's piled up over the years. And eventually, if we keep pressing in on this challenge, we're going to get down to some really rich gold bedrock where the real value, the transformation begins to happen. So don't give up. If you haven't, in the first 2 weeks, you're like, man, I've read these things, I've done the challenges, I've done the call to actions, I've thought about the points to ponder, but I don't feel anything yet. Stay in it. Tell me, you cannot engage with the words of Jesus Christ in faith and be the same. God is going to change you. Just continue to let the words of Jesus work every day. Say, God, what are you saying to me? I want to hear what you say. Ask Jesus, I want to hear your voice. And you do that, I'm telling you, I've said it, but I'll say it again. When you get to the end of these 12 weeks, you're going to be transformed because Jesus Christ desires to change you and leave you like you've and leave you completely transformed in the person you were when he found you. That's not just a challenge, that's a promise from Jesus Christ. God bless you. Thank you again for having the courage and the faith to take this challenge. We're almost to the quarter way through. Three weeks. At the end of this, we'll be a quarter way through this challenge. And remember to continue to lean into it. Encourage somebody who's on this challenge with you. Or again, it's not too late to invite somebody. I know we're into week 3, but they can catch up because they can even jump in all the way in the middle of this and still get something from it, even though they didn't start from week 1. So I just want to encourage you, and God is working. I know he is. And just continue to engage every day in the Red Letter Challenge and let the words of Jesus continue to transform you. God bless.